Hello, good afternoon from Manchester, a city which has experienced the United Kingdom's worst terrorist attack since the July the 7th bombings in London in 2005. Here at the Manchester Arena last night, 22 people were killed, 59 were injured. They're now being treated at a number of hospitals in and around Manchester. They were among thousands of young people who had come to a concert here by Ariana Grande, an American singer, last night at the Manchester Arena. And as they were at the concert, at the end of it, at around 10:30 last night, the explosion went off. Let's just talk you through exactly what we know so far. Well, Greater Manchester Police say they were called to the arena at exactly 10:33 last night. The Prime Minister called the attack on fans at the Ariana Grande concert here an act of appalling, sickening cowardice. The explosion happened in the arena's foyer as people had begun streaming out through the doors at the end of the concert. Police said the lone male attacker who died in the blast detonated an improvised explosive device. Well, security has been tightened in the wake of the attack. Surrounding streets have been sealed off here in Manchester, and nearby Victoria Station has been closed. Let's get a report now from Richard Galpin, just to say a warning that this report from Richard Galpin does contain some scenes you may find distressing.
Oh my God. What's going on? What just happened?
What had been a night of joy and elation for thousands of teenagers turns to absolute panic. Everyone's heard what they think is a bomb going off. And the only thing now is to get out of this arena as fast as possible.
It was shocking, just heard this massive bang and then everyone just started running towards us, screaming and crying, and everyone just trampled over us to get out.
I seen parents with kids running out with blood all over them, and I picked this lady up who said she was looking for her grandkids, who couldn't find her grandkids. She just picked a young girl off the floor who was covered in blood with her parents laying next to him, and it's just all bizarre.
There's glass and there's nuts, metal nuts that have been packed in the device that's exploded, because I can't think of anything else that's got nuts that would be flying around.
Which way?
Children are amongst the many casualties. All the major hospitals in Manchester being used last night to receive the injured and the dead. And this morning, the police confirmed it was a terrorist attack carried out by a suicide bomber.
This has been the most horrific incident we have ever faced here in Greater Manchester, and one that we all hoped we would never see. Families and many young people were out to enjoy a concert at the Manchester Arena and have very sadly lost their lives. And we believe at this stage the attack last night was conducted by one man. The priority is to establish whether he was acting alone or as part of a network. The attacker, I can confirm, died at the arena. We believe the attacker was carrying an improvised explosive device which he detonated, causing this atrocity.
In Downing Street, flags are flying at half-mast in the aftermath of the worst terrorist attack in Britain since the suicide bombings on London Transport 12 years ago.
All acts of terrorism are cowardly attacks on innocent people. But this attack stands out for its appalling, sickening cowardice, deliberately targeting innocent, defenceless children and young people who should have been enjoying one of the most memorable nights of their lives. Let us remember those who died, and let us celebrate those who helped, safe in the knowledge that the terrorists will never win, and our values, our country and our way of life will always prevail.
The horror of what happened at the arena last night led to many ordinary people offering to help. Taxi drivers providing free lifts for those who couldn't get back home. Others offering rooms for anyone needing somewhere to sleep. As for who was responsible for this attack, the police believe they do know the person's identity. And already a 23-year-old man has been arrested in connection with the bombing. Also this morning, the first victim has been named. She's 18-year-old Georgina Calendar, on the left in this photograph, posing with the singer Ariana Grande, who was performing at last night's concert. The children at the concert would never have imagined they'd end up like this, having to escape a terrorist attack. But it's clear they were deliberately targeted, and that has provoked both shock and revulsion in this country and around the world. Richard Galpin, BBC News.
Well, terrifying accounts have been emerging all day from the concert goers who were here at the Manchester Arena last night. You can just see the stairs there that many people ran down after the explosion went off at about 10:30 last night. People have been talking today about how they got separated from loved ones and their desperate search for loved ones who are missing. Also talking about how they saw and heard the explosion and saw nuts and bolts flying through the air. Danny Savage reports now, and I should say again that you may find some of the pictures in his report distressing.
This is my daughter Olivia. I haven't seen her since 5 o'clock last night. She was at the Ariana Grande contest with a friend. I'm worried sick. If anybody has seen her, please contact the police. Contact somebody, let her know you've seen her. Even if you think you've seen her, just let the police know, please.
An appeal from a desperate mum. Charlotte Campbell hasn't heard from her daughter Olivia, who was at the concert last night. Her family has been out searching for the teenager for hours.
I need my daughter home. I need to know where she is.
On the wards of numerous hospitals across Manchester, the casualties are being treated and the bereaved are being comforted.
And then we saw families and stuff crying and shaking, and we weren't sure what had happened. We thought it was a balloon that had popped, or possibly a wire, because since we were so close to the front, we didn't see the explosion. But we managed to get out of the arena, and then we heard the evacuation bells, and the minute we heard the bells, we just ran up to our hotel, which is just here.
Outside city centre hotels, survivors recounted the horror of what happened inside the arena.
Just towards the last song, she let a load of helium balloons down, quite large, and this bang happened, and we thought, we looked at each other, and then we were like, no, it can't be something that you see on the news all the time, that doesn't happen to people like us. So then we were like, oh, it's balloons. So everyone kind of calmed around us, and then all of a sudden, everyone just started screaming and running in every direction, and there was one girl, diagonal, wasn't there?
She tumbled.
She tumbled from over the seats.
She went over about three seats. She went with such a force.
On social media, numerous appeals soon appeared for concertgoers to contact home. Deborah Hutchinson from Newcastle wrote, "My daughter Courtney Boyle and partner Philip have gone missing tonight in an attack at Manchester. Please share and help find them. I need them home safe." People who were there tried to offer help online too.
I'm sharing pictures of missing people, people that need help, people that have nowhere to sleep, no food or water, people that are stranded in Manchester, to try and get the awareness out for people that are willing to help.
A picture of chaos and panic emerged.
We heard an explosion, so I was like, we need to run. So we started running, we ran straight out the doors, all the way down to the hotel, and all I could hear was screaming, people crying, everyone was just running everywhere, it was completely madness.
It's hard to imagine a softer target for this attack. So many of the teenagers and children who were there last night were given the tickets as a Christmas or birthday present. Thousands of teenagers and young people have gone to school this morning knowing of a friend or a friend of a friend who was at the concert last night. And now numerous families are having to arrange the funeral of a son or daughter who went out yesterday evening so excited ahead of that concert. Danny Savage, BBC News, Manchester.
So we now know 22 people killed, 59 injured, and the injured are being treated at a number of hospitals in and around Manchester. The Prime Minister has been praising the work of paramedics, doctors and nurses as they try to care for those people, many of them with life-threatening injuries. At Stepping Hill Hospital, one of those that's taken in casualties from the Manchester Arena is our health correspondent Dominic Hughes. Dominic, what's the picture there?
Yes, good afternoon, Ben. Well, we know that fleet of 60 ambulances, drawn not just from Greater Manchester, from the North West Ambulance Service, but from neighbouring services as well in the Midlands, in Yorkshire, in North Wales, ferried the 59 most seriously injured people to 8 hospitals in the Greater Manchester area, including the major trauma centres at Wythenshawe and at the Manchester Royal Infirmary. But there were so many people who were badly injured, other hospitals took them as well. So here at Stepping Hill, 9 people were admitted with major trauma injuries. We know that at least one of those was a child. 3 of those people were still being operated on this morning, so they are in still a very serious condition. But here at the hospital, we've heard stories of staff coming in overnight to help out in A&E and to help out in operating theatres. And we know that the hospital actually had to turn some staff away because the next couple of days are also going to be challenging for the NHS across the region. But we do know that they say they have enough blood from blood donation centres to treat all those who need it, but they are asking people to think very carefully before they go to A&E, as while services are up and running as normal, they will be under bigger pressure.
Dominic, thank you very much indeed. Dominic Hughes reporting. Well, the Prime Minister, Theresa May, has chaired a meeting of the Government's Emergency Committee, COBRA, in Downing Street this morning. We gather there will be another meeting of COBRA later on today. She is also travelling to Manchester with the election campaign suspended. She's travelling here to meet the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police and other senior police commanders here. Theresa May has described what happened here at the Manchester Arena as a callous terrorist attack. Paul Adams has this report.
Forensic police at the scene this morning, beginning to answer key questions. How was this attack carried out? What, if any, wider lessons need to be learned? In and around the venue, there will be clues. In London, ministers gathered for a meeting of the government's top security committee, COBRA. After the first mass casualty attack in Britain for a dozen years, what level of danger does the country now face?
The threat level remains at severe. That means that a terrorist attack remains highly likely. But the Independent Joint Terrorism Analysis Centre, which sets the threat level on the basis of the intelligence available to them, will continue to assess this throughout today and in the days ahead.
Not since 2005 and the attacks of 7/7 have the authorities had to deal with something on this scale. Plenty of plots have been foiled in the years since, and counter-terror police are still making arrests at an average rate of 1 a day. But the public perception of the threats we face has changed. 4 years ago, Fusilier Lee Rigby was hacked to death near a London barracks. And 2 months ago, an attacker using a car and a knife killed 5 people in Westminster. Last night's atrocity was more sophisticated.
This attack does involve someone being able to get hold of explosives or make explosives, turn them into a belt, and then make the effort of putting bolts and things in that in order to kill people, and then has used it at one of the most effective times. So this is a much more professional style attack.
Does this mean that big venues up and down the country need better protection? There's no evidence yet that last night's attacker passed unchallenged through security, but some concert goers have voiced concerns.
A few people that we spoke to, like friends that we'd met before and after the gig, they said their bags weren't checked or anything like that. And usually, like, I'm quite a regular gig goer, so I'm used to getting bags checked for security purposes, but there was no, we'll just scan the ticket, went straight in.
A brief moment of panic this morning outside Manchester's Arndale Centre. Shoppers said they heard a bang. The danger, if any, passed, but the Arndale has been targeted twice in the past. In 1996, it was wrecked by an IRA bomb. And 8 years ago, a plot involving a car bomb and suicide vests was foiled. A Pakistani student was convicted in the US in 2015. Investigators at the arena will want to know how and where the attacker obtained the ingredients for his bomb. And crucially, was he acting alone or part of a cell? In London, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Cressida Dick, says more officers have already been put on duty. The impact of last night's attack will be felt right across the country. Paul Adams, BBC News.
Well, we can talk now to our chief political correspondent, Vicky Young, who's in Downing Street for us this lunchtime, and our Home Affairs correspondent, Daniel Sanford, who's at Greater Manchester Police Headquarters. Daniel, to you first. So-called Islamic State claiming responsibility for this attack. What more do we know about the attack and whether it was the work of one man or perhaps an organised group, an organised cell?
Well, first of all, I think we have to set aside that claim of responsibility by so-called Islamic State. They've had a tendency to do that regardless whether or not they've been involved in attacks in recent years. What we do know is at this point there appears to have been one attacker who is carrying an improvised explosive device and that he was killed in the attack. What police are now trying to do is try and work out where that improvised explosive device, where that bomb was made, because critically, once they find that, they'll be able to try and work out whether he made that device by himself or whether he was assisted by others in making that device, and of course that then opens up a wider network. We do know that there were expected to be a number of arrests today. A 23-year-old man was arrested in South Manchester not that long ago, and that's part of obviously arresting known associates of the man, because police have identified who they believe the bomber was because he was actually carrying a form of ID on him, so that didn't make it too difficult for them to get to who they thought it might be, and it sounds as if they're fairly sure now from what Theresa May was saying who that was. One very tragic bit of news that we now understand that the youngest person that this bomber killed was of primary school age, possibly 7 or 8 years old. So absolutely horrendous that one of the victims could have been that young. This is a massive national counter-terrorism police operation, and at the moment we're only in the foothills.
Indeed, yes, Daniel, thank you. And we do know that many of the fans at the concert were very young indeed. Let's go to Vicky Young, our chief political correspondent in Downing Street. And Vicky, the Prime Minister making her way to Manchester this afternoon to coordinate with police commanders.
Yeah, that's right. She's very much been dealing with the practicalities. We know that overnight she was kept up to date throughout the night with what was going on. This morning she chaired that emergency meeting with other senior cabinet colleagues, senior police officers, the intelligence services, looking at the investigation, of course, but at the practicalities of those that are injured and, of course, discussing the ongoing threat. But I think at times like this, it's not just about the practicalities. People do look to the Prime Minister to try and encapsulate how the nation is feeling when it's a time of great shock, and we could hear that in her speech here on the steps of Downing Street today. The anger, the defiance too, saying that our values will prevail in the end, that we will try and stop these terrorist attacks, but she's also very aware that she is not the first British Prime Minister to stand here and have to react to this kind of atrocity. But I think she too was trying to talk about really the emotion, the scale of this, because of the way it seemed to be targeted at young children, calling it a sickening cowardice. Now, she also, I think, wanted to offer hope to people who are feeling maybe in despair, saying, don't just think and envisage those awful scenes of carnage, but think about the positive side too, the help from the emergency services, from members of the public in Manchester. She wants people to hold on to that as well. Now, as we know, we're in the middle of a general election campaign. It certainly doesn't feel like that at the moment. That has been suspended. There are no discussions yet, we're told, about when that may resume. At the moment, it just seems far too soon to get back into the cut and thrust, really, of a general election campaign.
Vicky, thank you. That's Vicky Young, our chief political correspondent there in Downing Street. Let's go to Gordon Carrera, our security correspondent. Gordon, obviously a wide-ranging investigation not just here in Manchester, but in London, around the United Kingdom. What else are you hearing about the investigation?
Well, it is this urgent need to find out whether this individual did act alone or was part of a network. A key aspect of that will be trying to locate where the devices were made, trying to find a bomb factory and then understand whether other bombs could be out there. That's a vital issue for the police and the security services to know whether the threat persists, whether there is a remaining threat out there from potentially other people and other devices. The threat level has not gone up to critical, though, which means they do not have hard intelligence of another imminent attack. If they did have that, they would have gone up to critical. But they are still trying to bottom out the network behind this individual, if one exists, or understand how exactly he came to manufacture and develop this device. And I think that will mean very urgent investigative work by MI5 and the police. We're likely to see more arrests, more raids today as they try and answer those questions.
Gordon, thank you very much indeed. Well, we've heard from Theresa May, the Prime Minister. We can hear now from the leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, who's been expressing his sympathy to the families of the victims and also his admiration for the emergency services.
Any support needed by any of our services must be given, and we must support those people that have suffered so much, those families that have lost young ones, those families that still don't quite know what is happening with their own children. This is the most terrible and traumatic time. In these circumstances, we have to come together. In these circumstances, a city and a community comes together in solidarity and in strength. So we carry on. We don't allow these attacks and these people to divide us or prevent us from leading the decent, normal lives that we all want to lead.
You're watching BBC News with special coverage from here in Manchester. Well, leaders from right around the world have been condemning what happened here last night at around 10:30 at the Manchester Arena. 22 people killed, 59 injured. Flags are flying at half-mast at Downing Street and the headquarters of the European Union in Brussels as well. As we've been hearing, all election campaigning has been suspended for the time being, including the launch of the Scottish National Party manifesto, which was due to take place today. Our diplomatic correspondent, James Landale, has this report.
Paris and St. Petersburg, Brussels and Berlin, London and now Manchester. The threat of terrorism is one that few nations can avoid and many leaders must face. And today it was their turn to share solidarity with the people of Britain. On the latest stage of his tour of the Middle East, a place that has had its fair share of suicide attacks, President Trump said what he called the wicked ideology behind terrorism had to be completely obliterated.
So many young, beautiful, innocent people living and enjoying their lives murdered by evil losers in life. I won't call them monsters because they would like that term. They would think that's a great name. I will call them from now on losers because that's what they are. They're losers.
The president's spokesman said he'd telephoned Theresa May to express his condolences, the first of many world leaders to make similar calls. The newly elected president of France, Emmanuel Macron, also spoke to the Prime Minister and offered her all means of cooperation to help Britain in the fight against terrorism. In Berlin this morning, the Union flag was at half-mast at the British Embassy, and Germany's Chancellor offered her support and sympathy.
Dieser mutmaßliche terroristische Anschlag.
This suspected terrorist attack, she said, will merely strengthen our determination to continue working together with our friends in the UK to combat those who plan and carry out such despicable acts. People in the UK can rest assured that Germany stands shoulder to shoulder with them.
Deutschland steht an ihrer Seite.
In Brussels, flags at the European Commission and here at the European Parliament were also lowered out of respect to the victims. The President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, tweeted, "My heart is in Manchester. Our thoughts are with the victims." The Commission President, Jean-Claude Juncker, expressed his deepest sympathies. In a telegram to Mrs. May, President Putin offered to step up Russia's counter-terrorism cooperation with Britain. And other leaders from around the world offered their condolences and support. Japan's Prime Minister said this week's summit of G7 leaders in Italy would show their determination to stand up to terrorism. President Xi Jinping, who visited London last year, telephoned the Queen to say China stood with Britain at this difficult time. And in Australia's Parliament in Canberra, the Prime Minister there condemned what he called a vile attack directed at teenagers.
This is an attack on innocence. Surely there is no crime more reprehensible than the murder of children. This is a direct and brutal attack on young people everywhere, on freedom everywhere.
It was a message that echoed around the world across social media. James Landell, BBC News.
Well, we were hearing a little earlier from Daniel Sanford that tragic news that what we think is the youngest victim of the attack was just 8 years old, Safi Roussos, who was from Leyland in Lancashire and who was attending a primary school at Tarleton in Lancashire. So 8-year-old Safi Roussos, a primary school child from Lancashire, has been named the second of the fatalities to be named after this atrocity here at the Manchester Arena. Well, some 59 injured are still being treated in various hospitals in Manchester, around Manchester as well. Our health editor Hugh Pym is at the Manchester Royal Infirmary for us this lunchtime. Hugh, what is the picture there?
Well, Ben, a short time ago we had a briefing from a senior official of North West Ambulance Service and a senior health official here in Greater Manchester summing up the NHS's response right across the region, because patients, those 59, are spread across 8 hospitals. 9 of them are here at Manchester Royal. Now, we asked how many of them were children, how many were adults. They weren't able to confirm that or say much more, but we know that 12 are at Royal Manchester Children's Hospital, and there is at least one other child at another hospital. They paid tribute to the emergency services and what they said was a terrible night for Greater Manchester, expressed their condolences for the bereaved, but said there had been a very joined up plan put into action. They had in effect written the plan beforehand. They talked of getting documents out and enacting it very quickly in terms of coordinating the ambulance response, ambulance help from other parts of the north of England, getting clinicians, doctors and nurses into hospitals. There were 60 vehicles deployed, 60 vehicles with paramedics. About 300 staff were involved overnight. Now, they said some of the 59 are seriously ill. They wouldn't say how many. Some are in intensive care, and they said some may be in hospital for a long time yet. And they made a sort of plea, if you like, to local people that these hospitals will be under a certain amount of pressure and strain in the days and weeks ahead, and that people should respect that before going to A&E, and only to do that if they particularly needed it.
Hugh Pym, thank you very much indeed. Hugh Pym, our health editor there. Well, part of the tragedy of what happened here in Manchester last night at the arena there behind me is that there were so many young people there at that concert by Ariana Grande, and the singer who has so many young fans has tweeted that she is broken from the bottom of my heart. And the Manchester Arena is the biggest pop venue of its kind in the city. It's got a packed capacity of 21,000. Some of the biggest names in pop and rock perform here. Our entertainment correspondent Colin Patterson reports now on the response to the tragedy here of the entertainment and music industry.
It was a situation with which any parent could identify. Dropping your children off at an event they've been looking forward to for months and coming back to pick them up a couple of hours later. They'd come to see Ariana Grande's Dangerous Woman tour, but ended up being the ones in danger, members of an audience which became the target of a terrorist attack. The singer made her name as a children's TV star and still attracts a very young, predominantly female fan base. Many in the crowd were pre-teens, some as young as 7 or 8. Entertainment stars expressed their horror at the night's events.
It shocks me every time we hear this sort of news, that attacks like this can happen, but especially when there will be so many children at this concert tonight. We'll all go to bed holding our little ones even tighter this evening.
Last year, Time magazine named Ariana Grande as one of the 100 most influential people on the planet, highlighting her 150 million social media followers and the role it plays in attracting her young fans. And it was with a tweet that she communicated after the attack, simply saying, "Broken, from the bottom of my heart. I am so sorry, I don't have words." Now the world of music is using the same platform to voice their support, both for her and the city of Manchester. Taylor Swift says she is offering her thoughts and prayers and tears for all those affected by the Manchester tragedy. Harry Styles described himself as heartbroken over what had happened. A sentiment shared by Katy Perry, who said she is broken-hearted for the families and broken-hearted for Ariana Grande. And those stars can picture exactly where the attack took place, because the Manchester Arena is the second largest indoor music venue in Europe, and their world tours all take them there. In fact, tomorrow night, Take That were due to play the first of 3 homecoming gigs in the venue. Now, it's a crime scene. Harvey Goldsmith, the promoter behind Live Aid, says last night's attack has huge implications for the live music market.
The most vulnerable point is on the exit, and therefore I presume all the arenas and the promoters together will review how to deal with people leaving concerts. But if it's outside the concert area, arena itself, where the concert takes place, if it's on the way out, it's very difficult to do much more than is being done now.
It is believed that Ariana Grande will cancel the remaining European dates of her tour, which was scheduled to reach London tomorrow. The former child star is now having to deal with the most adult of situations. Colin Patterson, BBC News, Manchester.
Well, Manchester is a city still really coming to terms with the atrocity here last night, and so many deaths, so many injuries of so many young people in particular. Theresa May has paid tribute to the city. She said this morning the cowardice of the attacker was met by the bravery of the emergency services and of the people of Manchester. Dan Johnson reports now on a city pulling together.
Manchester streets, busy with shoppers. Some shocked, many sad, but also determined to show this city isn't afraid. They're proud too of the way people here responded.
Absolutely defiant. There is nobody in this world that will keep us away from coming to the centre of Manchester, to its vibrancy, its metropolitan feeling. It's fantastic, and no amount of evilness will ever dampen any good thought there is about Manchester.
Greater Manchester's new mayor shared their pride and defiance.
I want to thank the people of Manchester. Even in the minutes after the attack, they opened their doors to strangers and drove them away from danger. They gave the best possible immediate response to those who seek to divide us. And it will be that spirit of Manchester that will prevail and hold us together.
There were so many offers to donate blood. This morning they had to turn people away.
Obviously, with the tragedy that's happened, if we can help in that way, that'd be beneficial. So it'd be nice to, to do something to help.
I just really wanted to come down and see if I could help at all, because it's such a massive tragedy.
And there's just been an overwhelming response on social media, so I thought I'd come down and try and give blood, do my bit, yeah.
And last night, an instinctive reaction from the city's cab drivers. Not to run from danger, but to help others find their family and to offer them lifts home.
I'm just coming down here to see if anyone needs a lift home, if they're stranded or, who's lost or anything.
As a good citizen, it's the time where everyone needs to come together.
I thought I'd come out and try and help the people get around and get home free of charge, without having to worry about paying to get home.
This city has felt destruction before. An IRA bomb exploded at the Arndale shopping centre in 1996, injuring hundreds of people just yards from last night's attack.
This postbox was about the only thing that survived. The city centre's been rebuilt around it, but it remains as a symbol of the strength and resilience of this city. And it's that same spirit that people are relying on here today.
And this evening, people will come together in this city centre to show their support in a vigil. Tough, gritty resolve is a natural response here, but it's certainly been tested. Dan Johnson, BBC News, Manchester.
Well, I'm joined here outside the Manchester Arena by our correspondent Robert Hall, who's been following the developments. And Robert, we've had named today 2 of the fatalities. Georgina Calendar, we can see on the left there, who was believed to be 18 years of age, and then 8-year-old Safi Roussos, just a primary school pupil. I mean, it's heartbreaking, the ages of these young victims.
I can read you a little bit of a statement from Chris Upton, Ben, who's the head teacher at Tarleton Community Primary School. She said, Safi was a beautiful little girl, loved by everyone. Her warmth and kindness will be remembered fondly. And just briefly, something else that's happening as we stand here, this police operation, we've been talking about it through the programme. We know that Greater Manchester Police have said that they knew the identity of the attacker, but didn't say who it was. We believe that he may be British born or certainly a British resident. There are a number of police operations underway. We understand there have been a number of arrests, and we understand there are more to come. Statement from the police imminent.
And we've been hearing about the extraordinary response here in Manchester of the emergency services, paramedics, ordinary members of the public, taxi drivers coming to help those who were lost and stranded after the concert.
Theresa May touched on it, didn't she? The way that these appalling events bring people together. It happened in the street where we're standing here, people coming out of hotels, coming out of buildings to care for the injured, to help them out of the arena itself, to get the children to places of safety, taxi drivers driving from as far away as Liverpool to take people home. And that spirit is spreading on into the city, and I think we'll see it again at the vigil at 6 o'clock tonight in the main square.
That's right, a vigil to remember the victims this evening. Full coverage of that, of course, here on BBC News. Let's pause now and get a look at the weather prospects with Nick Miller.
Ben, lots of dry, settled weather across the UK for the rest of this week as high pressure becomes established. And for this afternoon, if you're in some sunshine, it does feel quite warm and temperatures are set to go up as the week goes on. Not everywhere seeing the sunshine this afternoon. There's a lot of cloud across South Wales and South West England, where for some it's been quite damp and drizzly so far today. It's misty and murky in places. And clouds going to increase in Northern Ireland and Scotland, and into Western Scotland we'll begin to see some outbreaks of rain moving in. But I'll take you to 4 o'clock this afternoon, and plenty of clouds staying with us in southwest England and South Wales. I think inland it might just break up a little bit, get a little bit brighter, but around the coast staying misty and murky and holding the temperature down a little bit into the mid-teens. Some sunny spells in southeast England, but across North Wales and Midlands, parts of East Anglia into northern England, some of us seeing a lot of sunshine, temperatures into the low 20s. Increasing cloud for Northern Ireland and Scotland, where we still have a good deal of sunshine around, but from that cloud across western parts of Scotland, eventually seeing some outbreaks of rain, and for northern and eastern Scotland, the odd shower showing up for a time this evening. But overnight it's mainly northwest Scotland. We will continue with outbreaks of rain from low clouds sitting on the hills, and for other western and southern parts of the UK, some patchy hill and coastal fog around. And it's quite a mild night to come with temperatures in the low to mid-teens. Now then, tomorrow, if you start with cloud, it may well be that you brighten up and see some sunshine. If you start sunny, you'll see a bit of patchy cloud building, and the vast majority are going to be dry, though still some outbreaks of rain in northwest Scotland heading through the Northern Isles. So in the sunshine, it is going to feel warmer compared with today, and temperatures widely, I think, in the 20s, some spots into the mid-20s. And as I mentioned earlier, those temperatures head up a little bit further as we go through the rest of the week, and at least the start of the weekend, with plenty of sunshine. So I'll show you the picture for Thursday, and here it is, a good deal of sunshine around. A little bit more humid though, and those temperatures just creeping up a little bit further, and some spots edging into the upper 20s. And then it's upper 20s for Friday and into at least the start of the weekend near 30, and perhaps above for a time as this area of high pressure just pushes away to the east. We drag in some even warmer air from the continent, more humidity with that as well. And it's that in the sunshine which will lead to those temperatures soaring as well. So again, into the start, at least the start start of the weekend. Temperatures at 30, perhaps above, but uncertain, showery, thundery breakdown coming in from the west at some stage as we go through the weekend. So we'll keep you updated about that. And there is a forecast for where you are or where you're going, as ever, available at our website. And that's our forecast.
Nick, thank you. Let me just show you live pictures of the Prime Minister arriving here in Manchester. She's going to be talking to the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police and other senior police commanders here as they carry out the investigation into the atrocity last night at the Manchester Arena that left 22 people dead and 59 people injured. The Prime Minister's already described it as a callous attack on defenceless people. We know that many of the people killed and injured were young people. Two of those who've been named were 8 years old and 18 years old, just giving you an idea of the ages of those who were in the Manchester Arena when the suicide bomber detonated his device. Well, that's the latest from here in Manchester city centre. More throughout the day on BBC News, but now it's time for the news where you are.